Throughout this year, China has faced unprecedented economic challenges and successive waves of epidemics. Since November, major cities in China have reported overwhelmed hospitals, and social media has shown that many families have been affected by the virus, leading to a significant number of deaths. However, the Chinese Communist Party has been actively suppressing information about the true extent of the epidemic, leading to widespread public discontent. Many observers believe that China is on the verge of significant change. Various areas in Beijing witnessed an unusual occurrence of red auroras, painting the sky in a blood-red hue. According to experts following the traditional Chinese belief in the unity of heaven and humanity, such celestial phenomena are considered ominous signs for Shanghai, foretelling significant events in China. On the evening of December 1st, citizens in Beijing, Hebei, Heilongjiang, Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, and other regions captured awe-inspiring auroras. The Beijing aurora quickly became a trending topic, with rare auroras documented in Huairou and Mentugu districts. Videos circulating online showed that around 8 p.m. on December 1st, the sky in Huairou, Beijing, suddenly turned blood red, intensifying before disappearing. Last year in May, similar blood-red skies appeared in Zhejiang's Zhoushan, Fujian's Fuzhou, and a blood river in Baise, Guangxi, areas closely associated with the top leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. In an article for Epoch Times on December 3rd, a commentator mentioned the ancient concept of the unity of heaven and humanity, where celestial phenomena correspond to earthly events. Historical texts considered the appearance of a blood-red sky and blood rivers as ill omens, predicting war, famine, unjust imprisonments, and potential political upheavals. Several blood-red warnings were given in locations closely related to the CCP's top leadership, serving as clear and urgent messages to Shanghai, indicating a highly precarious situation. For instance, a Chinese folk prophecy book, Iron Plate Picture, mentioned the white-feathered bird as the leader of the doomed party, suggesting a tragic fate for those protecting the party. The character for Xi in Xi Jinping can be broken down into white feather. In the Tianliang Times program on December 3rd, Zhang Tianliang, a China expert and professor at New York Xi'an University, explained that ancient China used the term red gas to describe auroras, with the color red symbolizing blood. In alignment with the theory of the unity of heaven and man, the occurrence of auroras at mid to low latitudes indicates the impending unfolding of significant events in the human realm. Zhang pointed out that Beijing is not the only location experiencing auroras. Previously, similar red sky phenomena occurred in Zhejiang's Zhoushan and Fujian, as Xi Jinping mainly rose to power in Fujian and Zhejiang, with key officials around him belonging to the Zhejiang and Fujian factions. The appearance of ominous signs in these areas may also foreshadow troubles for Xi. The phenomenon of a blood-red sky has once again occurred, this time in Fuzhou, Fujian. On May 11th, a resident captured the blood-red sky, sparking widespread attention and speculation. Social media users jokingly commented that fishing boats should avoid turning on lights at night to prevent scaring people. Previously, on the evening of May 7th, Zhoushan in Zhejiang also experienced a blood-red sky for about 20 minutes. Some residents even reported it to the police, asking if there was a fire. While fires can turn the sky red, it is not considered an anomaly and is easily detected or witnessed by many. For example, during 2019-2020, Australia faced massive bushfires that burned vast forests, causing the deaths of over 3 billion animals over the course of a year. On November 28th at 9 a.m., Inner Mongolia witnessed the rare occurrence of a phantom sun, with many people capturing videos and sharing them online. Videos showed the sun surrounded by a large circular colored halo, with two additional smaller suns appearing on either side. Online information indicates that the phenomenon of the phantom sun in Inner Mongolia lasted for over 2 hours. On November 30th, Jiangsu also witnessed the same phenomenon, with a large colorful halo appearing in the sky above the sun, and many people captured photos to share on social media. While these dazzling phantom sun phenomena left many in awe, they have historically been considered ominous. Ancient Chinese beliefs associated the sun with earthly rulers, and celestial omens were closely linked to those in power. The appearance of two or more suns in the sky at once was seen as a bad omen, signaling the replacement of the ruler and the downfall of a dynasty. Over the past year, the CCP leadership has continued to pursue policies against historical trends, leading to economic difficulties, the accelerated departure of foreign funds and enterprises, a surge in unemployment, severe currency devaluation, social unrest, and rising public discontent. Mysterious purges of high-ranking officials, such as the unclear death of Li Keqiang, have fueled concerns among numerous party members. Various signs seem to predict the impending end of the CCP regime amid storms and turbulence. China's recent warning signs. Why are people urged to hoard grain? China's disease situation is extremely alarming. On December 1st, Yiwu City in Zhejiang Province suddenly issued a grain hoarding initiative. In it, it stated that urban and rural residents should maintain a stockpile of at least 10 days' worth of daily grain consumption, calculated per household. The initiative emphasizes the participation of the entire population in social grain reserves. Pay attention to this phrase. Everyone in society must participate in grain reserves. It further mentions that canteens in various departments and units should maintain a stockpile not less than the previous year's 15-day average consumption. This grain hoarding initiative bewildered everyone. During times of peace and prosperity, why suddenly call on everyone to hoard grain? The initiative claims it's based on considerations of saving food. But do you believe it? It brings to mind the saying, "Have grain in hand, no need to panic." Encouraging grain hoarding implies that a time of panic might be approaching. Besides evoking memories of the lockdown a year ago, there seems to be no more reasonable explanation. Considering the recent situation in China with the influenza virus, respiratory infections, and the new strain of the coronavirus, one wonders if there are plans for local lockdowns. It's hard to avoid such speculations, and it indeed unsettles people. Yiwu City is a county-level city under the administration of Jinhua City in Zhejiang. It's also a well-known hub for small commodities and the first place in China where a local government has issued a grain hoarding call this year. This brings us to a characteristic of China's political system. The lower the government level, the more grassroots it is, the more likely it is to speak the truth or make startling moves. Many times these two aspects coincide. Something startling is equivalent to telling the truth. Why does this happen? Let's briefly talk about it today. In the past 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, China has witnessed several absurd incidents, such as the ridiculous drama of an entire county having one positive nucleic acid test. China's response to the Omicron outbreak raises questions. One of the most absurd incidents occurred in October 2022 in Yongji City, a county-level city in Shanghai province under the administration of Yuncheng City. During the peak of the Omicron outbreak, with no new cases detected in the entire city, they decided to enforce a complete lockdown. All public places and streets were closed for 3 days. Rather than discovering a positive case and then repeatedly conducting nucleic acid tests and implementing various 14-day risk control measures, lowering the risk level step by step before lifting restrictions, they chose to close down for 3 days as a preventive measure with smaller losses. This was the mindset of the Yongji city government officials at the time. There are two kinds of logics in the world: general logic, and Chinese logic. Inside this box, it's relatively easy to understand the thoughts of CCP officials. However, looking at it from outside the box, it appears absurd. In the presence of a spreading epidemic, whether you conduct citywide tests or implement various control measures, it can still be considered an epidemic prevention measure, albeit quite inhumane and extreme. If there's no epidemic here yet, why take preventive measures? If you follow the most extreme epidemic prevention measures, it becomes very absurd. This is called putting experts aside and following leaders blindly, entirely devoid of a scientific basis, relying solely on the stability of the leader's hat. The recent events in China, such as the preemptive call for stockpiling and the resumption of nucleic acid testing, are seen as signals related to the recent wave of the epidemic starting in October. The cancellation of nucleic acid testing in China started in December of the previous year, transitioning from mandatory testing to voluntary testing. However, from December onwards, mandatory nucleic acid testing was gradually reintroduced, creating confusion among people who thought the testing had been completely canceled. In some provinces, there is a resumption of health codes, suggesting that these signs indicate a standby mode, ready to implement epidemic control measures if needed. The speaker urges viewers to share their recent experiences related to returning to China, especially if they have encountered unexpected nucleic acid testing. If there are no plans to take any action against those who test positive, there is no need for testing in the first place. Analyzing China's unusual approaches to epidemic control and economic challenges. Therefore, with those confirmed as positive, will they be forcibly isolated, sent to official facilities, or allowed home quarantine? Or is regular reporting of body temperature sufficient? This matter is expected to have follow-up information, but we may need to wait a few days to confirm, as individuals testing positive are likely to be restricted in their communication during isolation. So this is a speculation that if the number of nucleic acid-positive cases is not significant, the approach may involve isolating them in dedicated facilities. Here, there is a difference in logic between common sense and Chinese logic. Common logic suggests that if there are only a few positive cases, the government should not disturb more people and should allow those who test positive to isolate themselves at home. COVID-19 itself is a disease people are familiar with, not a new one that requires extensive monitoring. However, Chinese logic dictates that once a person tests positive, home isolation is not enough. Community officials are expected to supervise, but they can't sit at your doorstep 24/7. So, the alternative might be to seal off the entire building. This administrative approach is considered practical. If the community officials are more humane, they might not seal off the entire building but inform neighbors that someone needs isolation and everyone should keep an eye out. If someone from that household wanders out during isolation, notify me immediately. This would be considered quite lenient. Regardless of the approach, it will lead to the spread of information, which is highly unfavorable for economic recovery. People thought the pandemic was over, and suddenly these preventive measures are back. This could deter restaurant owners from opening and lead hesitant factory owners to lay off workers. It will undoubtedly have an impact on societal sentiment, something the Chinese government does not want to see. Therefore, if measures are needed against those testing positive, my estimation is that they may adopt an approach to isolate these individuals and keep the information from spreading. Looking back at the early stages of the pandemic, from late 2019 to early 2020, information was concealed. Currently, with limited information channels and foreigners exiting the scene, it's crucial to elevate the risk levels. I hope most people understand this, considering the potential consequences, similar to how a bank would treat you for serious credit card defaults in North America. At this point, there's also a possibility that the authorities themselves haven't fully grasped the actual situation of this round of the epidemic and don't know what to do. Therefore, within a certain range, reinstating nucleic acid testing in some places and putting health codes back online in others is a preparatory measure. This situation is not mutually exclusive with what we discussed earlier. Contradictions may coexist. Failing to understand the actual situation of the epidemic, this issue itself is an aftermath of over 2 years of sidelining science and the dominance of power. Currently, I'm skeptical about whether there is a genuinely scientific epidemiological investigation in China, given that everyone capable of sustaining themselves in a technical capacity is scrutinizing each other. There is also the frustration of South China's internal defense. A lot of headaches, from U.S.-China relations to Qingang and Li Shangfu to the rocket force and real estate defaults. In times like this, would health officials or chief expert advisors dare to report bad news? The big boss is irritated, and if you report these troubles to your boss again, you'll inexplicably get struck by lightning. China's current situation is a continuous, deepening cycle of troubles, with everyone busy every day. Despite issuing new speeches and documents daily, it seems ineffective because the most critical and urgent issues are either set aside or intentionally ignored. Take, for example, the slogan, "Supporting the Private Economy." The document is circulated, but the most crucial and urgent issue lies in the contradiction between finance and the development of the private economy. Without addressing this contradiction, how can the private economy recover? Private investment needs to flourish, requiring substantial tax reductions, reduced administrative approvals, and regulations. However, the fiscal demand is to collect funds from enterprises once the land sale ATM is empty. Reducing this tax becomes challenging. Government officials need to prove their importance, ensuring not a single person is cut from their positions. This forces them to make themselves extremely busy, creating more regulatory and approval mechanisms. The more procedures you have, the longer the approval process, damping entrepreneurial enthusiasm. Currently, Chinese society is caught in a state of being poor and busy, with 996 for office workers and even government officials in the front lines working 996. Everyone is getting busier and poorer. Epidemics and investigations into public safety should be prioritized, requiring concerted efforts from society. Yet, in this situation, besides delegating power to various regions to manage themselves, there's not much else that can be done. Epidemics are highly localized, and real estate is an even more localized issue. The problems faced by two places are never entirely the same. Look at Guangzhou and Shenzhen, both first-tier cities very close to each other, yet the real estate market data for October and November are entirely different temperatures. The pressure of this series of crises may be the beginning of the disintegration of the centralized power of the Chinese Communist Party. Xi Jinping fought for a third term, reaching the peak of personal power. However, at the beginning of this term, the overall crisis erupted. Apart from redistributing the acquired power, there seems to be no way to solve the problems. Black Friday is supposed to represent a sales bonanza, but this year, the day brought a rude awakening for many Chinese exporters who sell to the U.S. AMZ 123 survey data shows that as of November 21st, nearly 40% of the 1,147 sellers surveyed have experienced a decline in Black Friday sales. Among them, 14.33% of sellers have even seen a drop of more than 50%, and only 25.32% of sellers have experienced an increase in sales. The sales volume of the remaining 36% of sellers was the same as usual. The numbers paint a grim picture across the board. Only 22% of sellers saw the expected surge in Black Friday orders. Perhaps even more concerning, 11% said that despite higher order volumes, their profit margins took a significant hit due to high advertising and promotional costs needed to generate those sales. Orders evaporate, while costs skyrocket for beleaguered sellers. The plunging sales have left many cross-border businesses in dire financial straits. Merchants describe order volumes drying up during a time that should represent peak demand. One contributing factor is runaway advertising spending in hopes of salvaging some sales. Promotional pricing and ads have eaten into profit margins, even for the lucky few who manage to push some additional volume. Many people describe that Black Friday brought low orders and high advertising costs, creating a worst-case scenario. The crisis has amplified over recent years. Sellers point to significantly higher volumes during past Black Fridays and even non-peak sales periods. It seems the bottom has fallen out of the channel this year, leading some to declare dramatically that traffic had simply been hijacked or somehow vanished entirely for Chinese export platforms. In response to the crisis, some gallows humor has emerged among sellers to help diminish the stress. One popular spell making the rounds includes rhyming couplets, urging calm and patience during this storm, while reassuring that this too shall pass. However, behind the humorous bravado lies a kernel of truth. The brutal sales climate has left many cross-border sellers struggling to make sense of what happened. There are no easy explanations for why the well went bone dry, nor clear paths back to prosperity. The losses so far are all too real, and sellers are left praying for the nightmare before Christmas to end. Diverging fortunes, U.S. sites, surge while Chinese platforms crumble. The dramatic plunge for Chinese export channels stands in stark contrast to the stellar performance on some U.S. e-commerce platforms. Industry observers highlighted that major sites not collaborating with China saw sales surge over Black Friday week. Meanwhile, platforms focused on Chinese cross-border commerce suffered failure across the board. Categories spanning apparel to household items to small appliances saw little upside, and in many cases volume dropped significantly compared to regular weeks. The bifurcation illustrates a troubling trend of diminishing prospects for export-focused businesses catering to foreign markets. While major domestic players like Amazon can rely on steady demand, for the time being, Chinese merchants pinning their hopes overseas face increasing adversity. Black Friday was the most prominent sign thus far that fortunes may be reversing for these sellers. The special week of discounts that was supposed to produce a windfall yielded little besides red ink and frustration. Rather than celebrating the start of the holiday peak, many Chinese exporters are left questioning if they can survive this disastrous shopping season at all. The divergence with major U.S. retailers only underscores that this year may mark a permanent downshift for smaller cross-border merchants chasing overseas consumers. Quality woes drive customers away from Chinese export platforms. On top of order declines, Chinese cross-border players must also grapple with growing reputation damage tied to product quality and reviews. Consumer sentiment appears to be shifting, especially for category leaders. For example, fast fashion powerhouse Xi'an once seemed to offer an unbeatable value proposition with its rock-bottom prices. But damaging critiques have emerged focusing on terrible logistics, transparency issues around supply chains and labor, and disposable clothes with short lifespans. Scathing reviews now plaster forums with complaints saying the quality is really poor, or even deeming items unwearable or like junk. Where Xi'an once won praise for extremely affordable options, customers now blast practices like drop shipping direct from Chinese factories with little quality control. And Xi'an is no outlier. Rapid growth may have allowed some major Chinese e-commerce brands to paper over quality control issues in the past. But consumer distrust seems to have curdled into disappointment, resignation, and rejection. According to the owner, within the span of a year, the robot set had been repaired once and the vacuum robot itself was replaced with a new one. Yet, the problem is still the same. Despite the floor being spotless, the robot is still entangled with thin air. Chinese robotic vacuum cleaner versus seeds. The correct way of dealing with Chinese products. The waves of criticism have slowly eroded consumer trust in Chinese export platforms more broadly. Even brand devotees seem to be losing their evangelism and loyalty. Sentiment continues trending toward written-off purchases from China as sunk-cost transactions rather than satisfactory experiences. This reality confronts Chinese cross-border sellers with the question of whether quality concerns have reached a point where significant portions of their target market cannot be won back. The opportunity to turn around public sentiment shrinks with each new story of substandard products and post-purchase regret. If the structural issues causing quality gaps remain unaddressed, export-focused businesses may witness more overseas consumers permanently fleeing for alternative options rather than continuing to endure disappointments. Geopolitical tensions threaten viability of low-cost cross-border model. Looming larger than sales fluctuations or quality gripes is the rapid deterioration of the U.S.-China relationship in recent years. Ramping criticism of Chinese companies and government policies by American politicians now threatens to undermine Chinese cross-border e-commerce entirely through proposed policy changes. A flashy flashpoint came this summer when Republican and Democratic senators jointly introduced the Import Security and Fairness Act. The bill takes aim at Chinese exporters by eliminating a tax exemption on imports under $800 value. This loophole of not taxing cheap direct mail packages from China has enabled the ultra-low pricing model that sites like Xi'an and other Chinese platforms rely on. By closing the sub-$800 exemption, the new Trade Act would remove a critical advantage propping up low-cost Chinese goods. Companies focused on high-volume, low-margin, and rock-bottom pricing stand to take the biggest hit. The sudden increase in taxes on traditionally non-assessed imports could wipe out the razor-thin margins that enable deep discounts. The policy reflects a broader shift in attitudes where national security and economic priorities have made the U.S. government skeptical of perceived Chinese threats. Unfortunately for cross-border sellers, this has placed them squarely in the crosshairs of the conflict. Fears rise that sellers who have invested heavily in the direct mail export format could see their business model undermined overnight by the loss of preferential tax treatment. The coming months will determine whether the bill gathers momentum to pass into law. But for Chinese merchants heavily dependent on exporting low-priced goods, the writing may already be on the wall. A structural shift in trade policies could permanently rupture the formula that delivered success over the past decade. Managing that transition could determine if businesses sink or swim in the years ahead. Forced labor allegations also bedevil Chinese exporters. In addition to direct economic threats, Chinese cross-border players also face scrutiny over social compliance and human rights. Brands including Xi'an and marketplace DHgate stand accused of potentially benefiting from forced labor in China's Xinjiang region. The allegations assert major e-commerce players are positioned to ignore or benefit from oppressed labor like prison camps in Xinjiang. Critics argue the tax exemption on sub-$800 imports enables goods tainted by human rights violations to slip into the U.S. undetected at massive scales. Closing this trade loophole has consequently become an urgent agenda item for policymakers like Senator Marco Rubio. The social compliance issues wrap moral outrage within the economic argument for reforming preferential trade policies favoring Chinese goods. Whether concrete evidence eventually substantiates claims around brands' conflict in forced labor remains to be seen. But the court of public perception matters greatly, and the abundance of accusations has already molded perspectives on both sides. Rightly or wrongly, Chinese export channels now fight a battle to disassociate themselves from the troubles in Xinjiang. With intense scrutiny applied to social issues in supply chains, cross-border commerce faces substantial reputational risks tied to China's human rights record, in addition to the aforementioned product quality concerns. Between rising customer distrust and political attacks seeking to restructure trade flows out of China, e-commerce exporters are caught in a vice grip threatening their viability. Finding a path forward amidst the swirling chaos grows more challenging by the day. Excessive overtime mandates continue, despite slowing sales. While sales flounder, Chinese e-commerce companies still expect maximum effort from their workers. Sellers imposed mandatory overtime throughout Black Friday Cyber Week. Some demanded all-nighters with overnight and weekend shifts required to monitor promotions. Employees lament working days straight with few breaks while subsisting on minimal meal allowances. Despite the legislated standard of a 5-day, 40-hour work week, many report 60-80-hour weeks as typical crunch time norms. When staff raised complaints about safety traveling home late nights or reimbursements for transport, leadership reportedly dismissed concerns. Requests for basic provisions for those forced into overnight shifts failed to generate meaningful changes either. The grueling overtime stretched through the year's biggest shopping season, even as lackluster revenues couldn't cover basic company operations. The contrast illuminates the deeply embedded mindsets valuing worker sacrifice and adherence to short-term targets above all else. Moreover, the dismissal of grievances underscores the still limited power held by Chinese workers to oppose unfair company policies. Despite bold pledges to curtail excessive hours, reduce internal competition, and promote work-life balance, overburdened schedules remain the norm for many. The gulf between official stances and on-the-ground realities suggests a long road still lies ahead before balanced, humane working conditions take hold. In the interim, Chinese e-commerce staff must continue treading water amidst swirling undercurrents while seeking slight gains along the margins. Progress may arrive haltingly, but many cling to a hope for gradually improving fortunes in the years ahead. No end in sight for exploitative working conditions. Despite sporadic messages about reducing internal competition and easing unrelenting demands, the daily reality for most Chinese cross-border commerce workers remains as bleak as ever. Behind the flashy headlines touting work-life balance initiatives lies a status quo still rooted in exploitation for the sake of growth. Shop owners admit sustained monitoring and maximizing every last hour of employee output remains essential just to keep the lights on. Promises of progress vanish when profits enter the equation. Moreover, even if attitudes start to shift in some corners, entrenched powers stand ready to quash such optimism. Layers of bosses and investors up the chain still heavily prioritize immediate financial returns over community well-being. Their short-term interests directly oppose any earnest push towards balanced weekends or reasonable workloads. As one seller put it, the day when workers need to take out loans just to earn their base wages no longer feels far-fetched given current trajectories. Despite the warnings, systems of oppression become harder to dismantle once rooted over years. The sobering reality is that declarations heralding the end of ruthless demands have thus far breeds no tangible impact inside sweatshops or corporate halls. Paper tiger policies without accountability or resources to enable alternatives seem to only entrench the ceaseless grind rather than offer respite. Rather than optimism, many exhausted workers feel cynicism taking hold as they witness a widening gulf between publicity stunts touting progress and the daily grind eroding health and sanity. Until basic human needs come before shareholder profits, the marathon towards equitable work for Chinese e-commerce staff remains filled with adversity. The breaking point approaches, but so far calls for systemic reform gain little traction while workers continue laboring on. In recent months, many airports in China are empty. Some are lucky to just have a few customers. At noon on September 3, 2023, Pudong Airport T1 International departure, the terminal was empty. On October 9:30 a.m. Beijing time at Daxing Airport, the place is so empty it is like a zombie apocalypse. Chinese airport has been truly empty recently. Wonder what happened to China that caused this phenomenon to occur in the world's second-largest economy. Chinese Ghost Airport, a warning sign of China's business meltdown. Once crowded with travelers and commerce now, many airports in China have become a sobering symbol of the challenges facing China's economy and business environment. As stores stand empty and flights grounded, the hushed terminals foreshadow wider troubles on the horizon. Pudong Airport looks so deserted. Of course, this airport is lucky that it still has travelers. The withdrawal of major international companies across the nations has set off alarm bells on multiple fronts. According to a survey conducted by the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China, 1 in 10 companies in the survey said they have shifted investments out of China, while another 1 in 5 are delaying or considering doing so. Big companies like Gallup and Vanguard Group are also fleeing China. Not to mention, in October 2023, the overall level of international flight capacity in China's aviation industry was 54.7% of the pre-epidemic level, meaning that compared to prior to the epidemic that happened in 2019, almost half the flights that leave or come to China have been cut off. Of course, Chinese propaganda will say the situation is recovering, but it is almost 4 years. Yet, all these videos of empty airports are just in recent months. This mass business exodus is bringing increased unemployment, supply chain disruptions, and declining fortunes in related industries. Especially in the youth where unemployment rate is so high, even the CCP has stopped publishing the actual figure. Behind the retreat of foreign firms lie a thicket of strict regulations. With the CCP obsessed with catching spies, now they enact 24 measures to keep foreign capital from running away, but to no avail. Intensifying geopolitical tensions between China and the U.S. have also unsettled multinationals. Meanwhile, across other key industries, the exits continue apace. Machinery Corporation ABB transferred manufacturing valued at $277 million out of China this year, after fruitless years attempting to gain traction in the Chinese market. Home rental platform Airbnb also withdrew its listings business. Gaming giant Blizzard announced the closure of its Chinese servers after 25 years amid tightening content restrictions. And policy obstacles have dashed the hopes of entering Chinese markets for brands as big as Epic Games, despite heavyweight backers like Tencent. Onerous speech policies and data security demands impose continuous strains on international firms accustomed to operating more freely abroad. After LinkedIn drew fire for censoring politically delicate user posts at the Chinese authorities' behest, the career networking platform this year shut down its Chinese jobs portal. As storm clouds encircle the Chinese economy, the vacant corridors of Shanghai's international gateway reflect a business climate growing more inhospitable. With foreign investors increasingly on edge, the runway ahead looks to be a bumpy one. Big pharmas migrate manufacturing to India's more flexible market. Pharmaceutical giants, long reliant on China's contract drug makers, have also grown wary of concentrating their supply chains to this degree. As U.S.-China relations fray, Western governments are prodding companies to diversify operations beyond China. India's more flexible oversight of drug producers has made it an attractive alternative for big pharmas like Gonthera. Major international pharmaceutical companies are radically reducing their reliance on China's vast contract drug maker industry, increasingly perceiving India as offering a more stable and nurturing environment for production. Seeking to mitigate the risks of concentrating supply chains in China, big pharmas like Xi'an Therapeutics are actively exploring alternative manufacturing bases. India clearly appears as an appealing substitute, with contract development and manufacturing organizations, CDMOs, touting not only lower expenses but quicker turnaround times in delivering medicines to market. Citing concerns over China's stringent regulatory climate and uncertain geopolitics, pharmaceutical executives predict a major shift away from Chinese CDMO dominance when contracting formulation and ingredients manufacturing. U.S. brokerage. Jefferies reports drug giants now rarely issue requests for proposals, RFPs, to China's CDMOs as price no longer overrides supply chain security. India's more relaxed oversight and policies provide fertile ground for growth in contract drug production, as Western governments advise pharmaceuticals to diversify away from perceived over-reliance on China. Eager to court global big pharmas, major Indian CDMOs are logging surging revenues as drug manufacturing migrates from China. Say Life Sciences reports almost doubling its manufacturing capacity since 2019. And is set to add another 25% in the next year to meet growing demand tied to the China exodus. Competitors also posted strong profit jumps in the last financial quarter. These nimble Indian manufacturers are pitching their services better than China, offering to serve as secondary production sites alongside reduced Chinese capacity. But increasingly, big pharmas are choosing India as the principal manufacturing location when launching new products. Piramal Pharma Solutions reports big pharma clients now asking to fully integrate supply chains within India, sourcing all raw materials domestically rather than from China. While currently dependent on China for around 15% of active ingredients and chemical building blocks, Indian CDMOs are working to cut imports and achieve self-sufficiency. With China losing its grip on global pharmaceutical production, India's CDMOs are primed to capture dominant market share over the coming years. Freed from overexposure to China's stringent business climate, big pharma's migrating manufacturing may fuel India's rise as the world's medicine factory. LinkedIn's failed localization efforts lead to withdrawal from China. Professional networking platform LinkedIn, owned by Microsoft, recently announced the closure of its localized Chinese platform LinkedIn Career after years of attempting to gain a foothold in the challenging Chinese market. LinkedIn first entered China to much fanfare in 2014, being one of the only major Western social media platforms to establish an official presence in the country. However, right from the start, LinkedIn struck compromises on censorship, deleting posts by users in China and abroad that contained content deemed sensitive by Chinese authorities. These early censorship actions drew heavy public criticism in Western media. Over the following years, LinkedIn continued attempts to grow its user base and compete with domestic networking platforms like Boss Xi'an by tailoring products to local needs. However, the company struggled against regulatory headwinds as Chinese authorities tightened control over internet content. Demands grew for LinkedIn to restrict more speech on its global platform. By 2021, growth was sputtering. Strict speech laws stifled LinkedIn's networking and communication features. The platform's revenue from China remained at around 1% of worldwide totals, even after nearly a decade of operations targeting the market of 1.4 billion people. In the end, LinkedIn likely found that compromising founding principles around speech, transparency, and open communication was too high a price to pay for continuing its localized presence in China. Facing external criticism, sluggish growth, and rising domestic alternatives, the company decided to scale back offerings to jobs-only search before eventually shutting down entirely. LinkedIn's withdrawal stands as a cautionary tale of the sacrifices global internet firms must weigh to operate in authoritarian states. Tailoring products to appease state censors may neither guarantee market share nor assuage offended users and regulators elsewhere. After years of struggling to tread this line, LinkedIn finally chose to step back across it. China's electric vehicle boom has also battered foreign automakers like Mitsubishi, ending decades-long joint ventures as sales dwindle. Mitsubishi Motors forced out of China's rigged auto market. Japanese automaker Mitsubishi Motors will cease operations in China by 2023 after over 30 years in the country, withdrawing in the face of China's protectionist policies, regulatory pressure, and heavily manipulated auto market. Mitsubishi struggled to compete as China stacked the deck in favor of domestic electric vehicle makers through subsidies, data sharing requirements, joint ventures that enabled technology theft, and upcoming bans on foreign gasoline models. With the market grossly distorted against international companies, Mitsubishi's once strong sales plummeted. By 2022, volumes had crashed to 1/5 of their peak as Chinese consumers were steered towards national champions. Unable to overcome the systematic forces tilting the playing field, Mitsubishi had no option but to retreat. It will shutter manufacturing and hand its China joint venture to state-owned GAC Xi'an in a humiliating surrender of assets. Mitsubishi's ousting makes clear that China's rhetoric of opening doors to foreign business is nothing but superficial pretense. In strategic industries like autos, the government machinery works covertly but decisively to eliminate true competition. Through an elaborate framework controlling market access, credit, regulations, and consumer choice, Beijing ensures victory for its preferred domestic players, despite their technological deficiencies. After being subjected for years to the full onslaught of China's protectionist industrial arsenal, Mitsubishi ultimately fell victim. The company serves as cautionary example that foreign auto firms are welcome in China only until they become enough of a threat. Then the establishment sweeps them ruthlessly from the board, abandoning notions of fairness in pursuit of self-sufficiency at any cost. Gallup polling exits China, citing scrutiny and regulations. Gallup, one of the world's best-known polling and analytics firms, announced in November 2023 its decision to cease operations in China after 3 decades in the country. Gallup will close its offices in Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. The company said China's tightening economic and regulatory environment had made business conditions increasingly difficult over recent years. In particular, Gallup's core work gauging public opinion faced intensifying scrutiny under China's strict publishing laws. Gallup first entered China in 1993 to provide consulting and training services for domestic corporations and institutions on areas like business strategy and positioning. However, the company struggled to carry out polling on societal attitudes and policy issues, traditional staples of Gallup surveys globally. In recent years, Chinese security agencies have hardened stances towards research entities regarding the transmission of data to foreign firms as potential national security threats. The space for foreign polling narrowed further as new counter-espionage regulations took effect, aiming to keep information classified secret. Gallup drew negative attention in China for global surveys that depicted worsening perceptions and approval of the country abroad, including a March 2023 poll showing China's favorability among Americans reaching new historic lows at 15%. Unable to fulfill its core mission of measuring public opinion under the socio-political climate, Gallup leadership elected to withdraw entirely rather than maintain limited business-centric operations. As economic growth slows, more foreign consultancies and services companies may find regulations inhibitive for global business models dependent on data flows and measuring impact. Gallup's abandonment of China underscores the control state authorities wield in restricting visibility into views that leadership may deem unfavorable. The recent developments in China, highlighted by the eerily empty airports and the retreat of international businesses, paint a concerning picture of the nation's economic state. The stringent regulations and growing geopolitical tensions have triggered a significant exodus of foreign firms, signaling a profound shift in China's position as a global business hub. This mass departure isn't just a temporary fluctuation, it's a red flag pointing to deeper, systemic problems within the Chinese economy. China's inflexible approach to data security, speech policies, and its regulatory framework is increasingly incompatible with the operational needs of international companies. This rigidity, contrasted with the emerging appeal of other markets like India, is reshaping global manufacturing and trade dynamics. Businesses are actively searching for more predictable, business-friendly environments, leading to a redistribution of global economic influence. I got laid off. At 37, I was laid off, gripping my thighs hard, trying to hold back tears.
我感觉我这个大学白读了。平复了一下心情，然后来录这条视频。最近一直找工作，就真的找不到工作，但我又需要吃饭，需要活下去。然后
On November 29th, 2023, and the boss is sitting beside me, expressing helplessness. He mentions that November is the toughest month of the year. Taking our company as an example, the orders we've taken have been drastically reduced. I feel that the domestic market is shrinking, and international conflicts are escalating, leading to a worsening economic situation. As a company manager, we should set corresponding policies to get through these difficult 2 months. Currently, we've signed the first contract of this month. The price is not high, and the profit is too low. However, with low profits, we have to keep the cash flow going to pay salaries on time. Let's not ask for too much. If the company can survive, the employees can also get by peacefully. A lady shares her story saying, "At 37, I was laid off, gripping my thighs hard, trying to hold back tears. This is probably the last stubbornness after being exhausted. It wasn't very surprising, seemingly ordinary, yet extremely unusual." Facing parents who think their children have no skills, they couldn't argue with them. Being unemployed in middle age, life feels a bit blurry. On the 8th day of unemployment in Shanghai's Nanshan district, news of major layoffs from big companies emerged again. The whole society has entered a cold winter. The biggest news today is seasonal layoffs, cutting off all non-online projects and large-scale layoffs. It is said that completing the layoffs today will receive compensation plus additional benefits. The layoff wave in Shanghai perfectly reflects a harsh reality. What people fear most is not hardship or setbacks, but the agonizing wait. Even though the pandemic has passed, and the economy seems to be improving on the surface, many people are posting complaints online about being laid off. In major cities like Starbucks, McDonald's, and KFC, the restaurants may appear full, but the customers are actually middle-aged individuals busy applying for jobs online. In some companies in Shanghai, employees are even pressured to resign, and refusing to do so may still result in being forced to leave. Some companies go to the extent of intentionally enticing employees to resign. It's essential to understand that for an ordinary person, establishing a stable life in Shanghai is quite challenging. Many individuals in Shanghai may live with high mortgages, car loans, or expensive rents. As long as people work in Shanghai, they face fixed monthly expenses of at least several thousand yuan. For those who have families, the pressure is immense. Once you surpass the age of 35, finding a job may not be difficult, but securing a good job is incredibly challenging. Even if you lower your expectations, there's no guarantee of success because major companies in Shanghai are undergoing massive layoffs. Despite the bustling streets and apparent prosperity, most people are either unemployed or working as gig economy participants, such as ride-sharing drivers. Companies also convert year-end bonuses and equity benefits, providing some money even for those staying at home. Landlords have run out of surplus, and even in this big environment, they are not making any more trouble. The more they make trouble, the less money they get. In an economic downturn, the trend of emptying 6 wallets to buy a house, popular in the past, has diminished. People are living in the present. They eat and drink what they need. After all, there are quite a few news reports about foreclosures and auctions. Although tourist attractions seem crowded this year, a friend doing business in a scenic area says that there are significantly fewer tourists, and their spending power is weak. People focus more on participation in tourism. The factory workers still in service in Foshan, Guangdong, express concern. The entire factory has no work. Has our factory closed again? There is nothing to do in the factory this month, and we have had 6 days of continuous holidays. I have never seen the workshop so quiet. There is almost no work, and the machines have become decorations. There are hardly any orders for pigs. There are many empty containers in the ports, even in major ports such as Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou. Recent rumors about foreign trade being very sluggish are continuous. What is the problem with foreign trade? Data shows that China's overall foreign trade orders have declined by 40% this year, and some traditional products have even dropped by 2-3%. Many containers cannot be shipped out and are piled up in the ports. This situation was rarely seen before. Many export-oriented enterprises in the Yangtze River Delta have not resumed production since the beginning of 2023. Instead, they have downsized or halted recruitment. This is due to reduced orders, a lack of business, and the consequent reduced need for as many employees. In Shanghai, a 30-year-old female engineer was laid off, and the company compensated her with 140,000 RMB. Initially, she was happy because, after a year of hard work, she wasn't sure she could save that much. Moreover, she had been working in an exploitative manner, working overtime until 1 or 2 in the morning, often worrying all night about potential issues. She had thought about quitting directly, and now she finally felt relieved. However, after taking a break, she found that her resume submissions were like dropping a stone into the sea. She began to feel anxious slowly and couldn't sleep at night. It's been over 3 months since she became unemployed, and the compensation she received each day doesn't feel like it can support her for much longer. The job market is tough. The next person, a graduate from Tsinghua University, shared, "I got laid off." To make others believe he graduated from Tsinghua, he even showed his certificate. "I graduated from Tsinghua in 2022. After graduating, I found a job at an internet company in Beijing. Then, in the first half of this year, I got laid off. Before this happened to me, I always thought that getting laid off was far from me, but I didn't expect it to be so close. The day I got laid off was in the morning. We were working normally the day before. Suddenly, I saw a message in the company group saying that everyone should attend a meeting at 10 in the morning. I felt something was wrong because we never had such impromptu meetings. Moreover, it required everyone to attend. When I went to the company, I found that something was indeed wrong. The news of the layoffs was announced directly in that meeting. Then I turned to look. Seeing that Foxconn has been laying off workers, factories in various regions have begun to strike back. Riding for 5 days, 8 hours, with double pay on weekends, this work schedule strictly adheres to labor laws, revealing the real working hours of Chinese workers. If all factories in China follow this schedule, it could improve the working hours of workers and at least help them maintain a stable life. A boss of a clothing factory in Guangdong sadly stated, "This year's clothing factory has ended like this. When I sold my equipment one by one, when I threw away piles of raw materials, when I sold all the equipment to pay off debts, I realized that it was truly over. My efforts in this lifetime were ruined in an instant." What lies ahead? As the year-end approaches, the world's factory is in dire straits. Many large factories have closed down in the second half of this year. On June 30th, a printing factory in Dongguan Daojiao named Minghai Jingnan Factory announced a complete shutdown. The next day, August 21st, Zhenguan Precision Technology Limited Company in Dongguan Tangxia, with a registered capital of 30 million, also announced its closure due to long-term losses caused by market conditions. On September 28th, Mingxing Jinan Hardware Products Limited Company in Dongguan Human declared closure after 21 years of establishment. This is just a small fraction of the closures. Many small and medium-sized factories have faced a similar fate. The closure of these companies not only affects individual enterprises, but also impacts the entire ecosystem around them, such as restaurants, clothing stores, barber shops, and other related industries. The ripple effect results in a decline in business for all the interconnected businesses. Moreover, the closure of these enterprises affects the entire supply chain, leading to a chain reaction with many upstream and downstream suppliers. In the face of so many closed factories, the larger issue lies before us. The first problem is that the closure of these enterprises is just the surface of a single enterprise. The ripple effect is the ecological impact around this enterprise, affecting surrounding industries such as catering, clothing, barber shops, customer shops, tourism, and more. If people leave the area, how can businesses continue? The second problem is the impact on the supply chain of the closed enterprises. Because a large enterprise supports many supplier manufacturers, the chain reaction will lead to the closure of many companies. So, what is the future of China's manufacturing industry? If one can't make money in big cities, who would be willing to leave their hometown? The company might let me go, more precisely. They seem to want to force me to resign because I have been an old employee in the company for 6 years. If they lay me off, they have to compensate me with 60 to 70,000 yuan. From the company's perspective, they think it's not cost-effective. The best solution is to force me to resign voluntarily. When I sensed something was wrong, I secretly sent out resumes. I applied to dozens of companies, but none of them called me for an interview. Is it because my requirements are too high? In Shenzhen, a medical technology company has issued 2 notices of leave, including the list of personnel on leave for Zili and Pingshan. However, the duration of this leave is chilling, from July of this year to May of next year. Many employees are still in the company, thinking they are working, but they received the longest leave notice in the country, a 10-month leave at once. Truly a crying laughter. This company is called Shenzhen Huamai Xinwei Medical Technology Limited Company, established in 2014, specializing in medical health diagnostics. The reason given by the company is insufficient orders, financial difficulties, and the decision to reduce personnel expenses and alleviate operational pressure through an extended leave of absence. This situation has been verified by the company, and some people have already been on leave. The company has no money for compensation, but this leave is compliant. I wonder if more companies will follow suit in this compliant leave, laid off again. In the afternoon, the boss called the remaining 4 employees for a meeting, indicating that it's over and everyone is dismissed. After finishing work, the boss called us into the meeting room and then settled this month's salary for us, but without compensation. Except for me, who has been here for only a month, other employees basically came in July. They have already become regular employees, but their compensation is just 1 month's salary. This is the resignation certificate. Originally, it stated that I resigned for personal reasons. I asked why they want to write personal reasons instead of the company's reasons. How can I find another job with this? He said, if I don't write personal reasons, write company reasons, what if you report me? In the end, he didn't write either personal or company reasons. He just removed it. Within a week, including supervisors, HR, front-end, and back-end staff, a total of 9 people were all cleared. I spent 31 days in this company, considering it as a 1-month tour in Wuxi's city center. This company was flourishing at the end of the year, but now, just in December, the old fortune has gone, and this winter is likely to welcome one of the most severe financial challenges in nearly a decade. This time, whether it's a head enterprise or a struggling small and medium-sized enterprise, everyone may find it difficult. Just at the end of November, the heart and the season can only have one beat. But some internet companies are slashing their game business, and the most affected area is the Shenzhen team. This company's approach emphasizes the speed of Shenzhen. In the morning, the radio station announced, and in the afternoon, the company rolled up its sleeves. The netizens' comments were funny. This company is known for its rapidity in Shenzhen. In the morning, the radio station announced, and in the afternoon, the company rolled up its sleeves. The netizens' comments were funny. This company is known for its rapidity in Shenzhen. The staff was notified to take a leave of 10 months, with the compensation plan being N+1. At the same time, the year-end bonus and equity will be settled. At least there is no problem with the creditor's rights, which is considered dignified. This cold wave is also spreading to other big companies. Didi is also undergoing a comprehensive layoff, and 30% of the people will become unemployed in this cold winter. Recently, every employee of Didi Chuxing is panicking, afraid that their name will accidentally appear on the layoff list. This round of layoffs almost covers the entire company, with an overall layoff rate reportedly as high as 20%. I also looked at Didi's financial report. In the first 3 quarters of this year, Didi accumulated a loss of $1.485 billion. If this round doesn't work, next year may continue to be challenging. Of course, not only private enterprises, even foreign and state-owned enterprises are taking action. Xinhua 3 Group also proposed voluntary salary reduction. Who is Xinhua 3? It is the core enterprise under the Tsinghua Uni Group, a high-tech technology enterprise. However, recently, it has also started to devalue. First, it called for voluntary salary reductions at the top level, and after the salary reduction, it continued to intensify its efforts to lay off employees. After talking about private and state-owned enterprises, even the cadres of 985 universities are also being laid off. Xigong University, a 985 university, is also mobilizing and deploying recently, planning to reduce institutions, cadres, and management personnel by more than 10%. If universities are taking such measures, what kind of job security can people in other industries expect? Let's look at a set of data. Before 2022, the total financial scale of the top 50 real estate companies reached 200,000 people. Jinggrui, Yuzhou, Yangguangcheng, and Zhongliang are all severely affected areas, not to mention those that have already encountered problems. In addition, this chart on the internet has compiled the layoff situations of several mainstream companies. Looking at all these, it can be said that this winter may be long and cold. In contemplating the future of China's manufacturing industry, the pervasive question arises, What lies ahead for a nation grappling with the simultaneous challenges of economic restructuring, corporate layoffs, and a changing global landscape? The profound implications of this winter of economic challenges extend far beyond individual stories, reflecting a broader narrative of societal shifts, economic recalibration, and the collective resilience required to weather the storm. On November 24, 2023, Xinhua news agency learned from the propaganda department of Anzi County, Linfen City, Shanxi Province, that at around 22 hours on the same day, a construction accident occurred at the Shanxi Yongxin Tonghai Railway Logistics Limited Company, burying 7 people in concrete, resulting in 3 fatalities. Netizens shared an analysis of the reasons behind the accident, where a scaffolding collapse led to 7 people being buried in reinforced concrete. From the video, it can be observed that the construction height exceeded 30 meters. According to relevant national regulations, this already falls into the category of extremely hazardous projects. It requires expert evaluation, and construction should proceed according to the plan proposed by experts. Unfortunately, judging by the spacing, construction methods, and support of the scaffolding on site, it is likely that the construction did not follow the plan. Additionally, upon closer inspection, the scaffolding was surprisingly arranged in a single row. According to regulations, the height of a single-row scaffold should not exceed 24 meters. Here, it directly reached over 30 meters. In the end, netizens lamented that the current regulatory system seems to be a mere formality. Even if the construction unit disregards lives for profit or lacks technical knowledge, shouldn't the supervisory personnel intervene when obvious issues arise? This is not an isolated incident. Let's take a look at the chaos on various construction sites. Reviewing safety accidents involving tower cranes at construction sites, each scene is heart-wrenching. Safety should take precedence over everything else. In Shandong, 2 construction cranes collided on a 30-story building site, resulting in the death of 3 workers. Eyewitnesses reported the loss of crane heads. A construction elevator accident occurred in Hengshui, Hebei, where 11 workers died and 2 were critically injured. In Qinzhou, Guangxi, a crane overturned at a construction site, causing the death of 2 high school students and injuring 1. In Shantou, steel materials slipped during hoisting at a construction site, resulting in 1 death and 4 injuries. Substandard construction site, helmets. Chinese workers complained that the safety helmets on construction sites are like eggshells. Workers demonstrated the impact resistance by colliding their helmets with those of supervisors. The workers' helmets immediately broke, while the supervisors' helmets remained undamaged. Workers claimed that the helmets of site supervisors are the most durable. Xi Jinping orders rigorous accountability for Ganeng Power Plant collapse, Fengcheng Power Plant. An analysis of the 11/24 major accident at Fengcheng Power Plant in Jiangxi reveals the direct cause of the incident. The construction unit, in the case of insufficient concrete strength for the 50th section of the number 7 cooling tower, illegally removed the formwork for the 50th section. This resulted in the loss of formwork support for the concrete of the 50th section, which was insufficient to withstand the upper load, leading to a collapse starting from the weakest point at the bottom. This caused continuous collapse and falling of the concrete and scaffolding system from the 50th section and above, with the falling debris impacting the pull ropes attached to the inner side of the tower, causing the overall collapse of the pull ropes. There are 3 main issues. 1. The construction progress accelerated, and the curing time for concrete was shortened, compressing the construction period from 212 days to 110 days. Simultaneously, the construction progress accelerated, leading to a reduction in the curing time for concrete before formwork removal. 2. The sudden drop in temperature resulted in slow concrete strength growth. Between November 21st and November 24th, the local temperature dropped sharply, and the construction unit did not implement appropriate technical measures to address the slow growth of concrete strength. Experimental simulation under the aforementioned conditions revealed that the compressive strength of the 50th section of concrete ranged from 0.89 to 2.35 MPa, and the 51st section's compressive strength was less than 0.29 MPa. According to mandatory provisions in national standards, the concrete strength for removing the 50th section formwork should be above 6 MPa. 3. The construction unit illegally removed the formwork despite the incomplete curing of the 50th and 51st section concrete. Although the project supervision team discovered this issue during the trial monitoring, they failed to take effective measures, allowing the labor team to illegally remove the formwork, leading to the occurrence of the accident. China News, citing informed sources, reported that the accident occurred during the final stage of construction. Workers from Hebei were dismantling the wooden scaffolding around the condensation tower when the not fully dried concrete began to disintegrate, leading to the eventual collapse. The source mentioned that among the deceased workers, the majority were middle-aged men between the ages of 30 and 40. Currently, 68 bodies of confirmed victims have been identified, with the youngest being 23 years old and the oldest 53. Chinese state media also reported that the expansion project of the Fengcheng power plant's third phase was undertaken by Jiangxi Ganeng Limited Company. According to the official website of Jiangxi Ganeng Limited Company, during the 100 Days of Coordinated Struggle mobilization meeting for the Fengcheng Power Plant Phase 3 project on September 13, 2016, the company emphasized the need to strengthen the work scheduling at the construction site and accelerate the construction progress. In recent years, numerous construction quality accidents have occurred due to high turnovers and rushing construction schedules. In a project in Gaotang County, Liaocheng, Shandong, during the pile driving process, a piling machine toppled over, hitting nearby workers' dormitory buildings and causing the collapse of the buildings. This incident resulted in 4 deaths and 4 injuries. In another instance, a 57-story high-rise building in Changsha County, Hunan, was constructed in just 12 days, sparking discussions both domestically and internationally. The swift progress raised concerns about construction quality, especially as the construction company, Yuanda China Holdings Limited, had previously faced scrutiny for the world's tallest building Sky City project. The practice of rushing construction schedules in large-scale Chinese projects has been perplexing. Commenting on a talk show on June 24, 2011, commentator Xu Zidong expressed confusion about the haste in completing construction projects. The hosts emphasized the importance of prioritizing safety over rushing construction timelines. They cited examples such as the Shenzhen Bay Bridge and Hong Kong's new airport, where expedited construction led to operational issues and safety concerns. Furthermore, they discussed China's high-speed rail projects and urged a focus on safety rather than meeting political deadlines. They cautioned against treating construction as a task, emphasizing the need for the utmost safety and security. Ironically, within a month of this broadcast, China's high-speed rail system experienced a major accident. The discussion also touched upon the Wenzhou train collision in July 2011, questioning whether the high-speed rail accident was a natural disaster or a result of human error. They pondered the role of Chinese media as either a mouthpiece for the people or a tool of the government, and the implications of accidents on China's pursuit of rapid GDP growth. In 2016, the New York Times reported that China witnessed a high number of work-related accidents annually, occurring in coal mines, factories, construction sites, and on roads, resulting in tens of thousands of deaths. Official statistics for the first half of 2016 showed that 14,136 people died in work-related accidents, a 5.3% decrease compared to the same period the previous year. Fast forward to 2022, and according to the Chinese government's statistics, a total of 20,963 people died in various production safety accidents throughout the year. The number of deaths in work-related accidents per 100,000 employees in mining, commerce, and industry increased by 22.7% from the previous year, leaving a grim impression of the situation.